I think these days, it's hard to find a single person whose life AI has not impacted, and beyond that, whose job AI has not impacted. So let's talk about it with someone who is very well versed on this topic and very intelligent. Arun Rai is a professor at the Robinson College of Business at GSU and holds the Howard S. Starks Distinguished Chair there, also the director and co-founder of RCB's Center for Digital Innovation. So the perfect person to speak with about this. Arun, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you so much, Savannah, for having me.
So, a lot of the headlines that we're seeing about AI are, these are my words, a little doom and gloom. It's AI is driving layoffs and it's coming for your job. What is the reality in your mind?
First, you're absolutely right. It certainly feels that way. And we have to acknowledge the pain and the anxiety that families are feeling around the dinner table. But I think there's a deeper story underway, and that companies are in the middle of a perfect storm. On the one hand, they have the pressure for cost cutting. On the other hand, they are under tremendous pressure to redesign jobs for the future. So what we are seeing is new jobs are being added, old jobs are being redesigned. And for companies that essentially throw AI tools at workers or approach this purely with a job cut perspective, that's awfully risky because you hollow out the enterprise. But I think we are seeing a lot of interesting and positive movement and momentum towards AI augmented work. Maybe we can talk more about how companies, educational institutions, government agencies are all coming together to figure out this positive future with AI, where we're creating jobs for people right from entry level to upwards for people to work with AI for the new AI economy.
Yeah, and how do they strike that balance? Because from a bottom line financial standpoint, obviously, if you have AI that can replace, someone's job who's on your payroll, great for the bottom line, but you still need the people behind it. How do, businesses kind of think about that?
Yeah, I'll take one very simple example to kick it off, and that's from my own world of work, and that's in education. Today, we have faculty members, instead of sitting and coming up with first drafts of quizzes or practice assignments or tabulating scores of students or providing routine feedback, a lot of this is and could be done with AI. And we find faculty and educators getting that time to really achieve what they're supposed to be doing, which is student learning and student growth. As another very quick example, right? I mean, I think about one of my doctors at Emory, and he now uses ambient listening to capture our interactions. So he's actually able to look at me during the consultation and engage with me as a patient, as opposed to taking a lot of his time as a typist. So we see that also with nursing, where instead of running around and getting vital signs by the hour, a lot of this could be captured, the repetitive work, the automatable tasks, they could be captured, and space is created for human judgment to come in. And I think that's the big shift that we are getting, is that the benefits of automation are essentially creating and almost paying for that higher order value, where the human judgment comes together to work with AI. And we are seeing a lot of that with entry level jobs as well, Spanner, just in terms of how those entry level jobs are being created.
Yeah. I do feel like there is a lot of fear of AI. There are certain factions of people who are boycotting it altogether. But and it's my opinion, and I don't know if you agree, that this is kind of inevitable. I mean, it feels like when the World Wide Web, was invented, it's like everything's about to change. And we're just going into it. What would you recommend for just the general public, the general worker? I mean, should we be embracing this, and in what ways?
I think that's an awesome question, right? So when we look at it, even amongst our students here, there's concern around entry-level jobs. I think there is a need for urgency. I don't think, I understand the fear factor, but worrying is not the goal. Our goal is to come up with a positive solution together. And when I say together, I'm just going to take an example, right? I mean, we have Georgia State have created something which is known as the PATH initiative, where we have pathways for AI training and hiring. It's a collaboration between GSU and MIT, along with Georgia employers, where we are trying to figure out, equip our students with the new cutting edge AI skills, and also a lot of work-based learning with our area employers. So what's happening is we have these new jobs and these new skills that need to be developed. And I think that's one approach I would say is partnerships in communities, among educational institutions, among corporations, with government agencies is going to be absolutely crucial. So there's a sense of urgency and action, and we need to get people ready, not nervous. And I think that's the key point I would like to emphasize here, Savannah.
Hey, if you're looking for something fun and meaningful to do with the kids this month, the Children's Museum of Atlanta, you know they got something for you. They are going all in on Earth Month. I mean, we're talking hands-on activities, live animals, STEM challenges. Joining us now to talk more about it, Karen Kelly, the museum's Director of Exhibits and Education. Karen, good morning. I always love talking to you because you get me excited about what you have to offer. Great to have you on this Friday.
Love to talk to you too, and I'm excited to talk about our Earth Day programming and activities.
So let's just dive into it. April being Earth Month, how are you guys leaning into that at the museum?
We're leaning into that all across the museum. You can attend all of our programs at different areas. Like, for example, at our science bar, you're going to be learning to recycle egg cartons and turn them into seed paper. On stage, you become a pretend explorer and go through all the different biomes in Georgia and figure out what it's like and what it looks like, and kind of gain an appreciation for the diversity of our state. We also have and our art studio, they are also recycling egg cartons into dragonfly and creating artistic dragonflies. Additionally, this weekend we are going to, on April 26th, we're going to have Trees Atlanta visiting us to talk about what they do to help support the Earth. I don't know if you've walked around Atlanta recently, but they've been very busy planting trees.
You know what I love what you guys have done with this is going to be unique from anything any other children's museum across the world is doing right now for Earth Month, because of how you're interweaving, as you were mentioning, parts of Georgia and Atlanta into the fabric of these exhibits. Why was it important to include that little local flair?
Because we are the Children's Museum of Atlanta. We want the children to connect with the Earth in their own backyards and make sure that it's relevant to them. Children are very concrete thinkers, so when it's in front of them and they see that, when they walk out of the museum, they go, oh, I learned about that in the Children's Museum. That makes such a strong connection and helps them remember to help take care of our planet.
Any specific age group that this is best geared towards?
We are open for children 0 to 3rd grade, and sometimes even older. So 11 and 12-year-olds, I think, are going to get a kick out of some of these activities.
And what do you hope kids of all ages take away when they visit this exhibit?
Well, what we hope they take away is that our planet is amazing and wonderful and beautiful, and we want to help keep it that way. By recycling, by being creative, by learning more about it, and just sort of being excited about what's in your own backyard. I mean, nature is actually really essential for children. It's important for them to get out in it. It helps to reduce stress by walking outside and enjoying it. But it helps more when you learn and you engage with your adults as you're walking outside and talking about what you learned at the museum, and then do it out in the real world.
Yeah, I think us adults
the outside world, not the real world. We're the real world.
Real world, outside world, it's all the same. Yeah, I think adults could probably take away something from this too. Any final parting thoughts for viewers this morning? What do we need to know if we want to get tickets? Is it timed entry, or can we just show up?
It is timed entry, but you can also just show up outside our doors. So you can get tickets online, you can get tickets on your phone, or you can show up without ticket and buy a ticket when you get here. So all kinds of different ways.
So the U.S. is walking a tightrope right now in the Middle East, pushing for diplomacy with Iran while simultaneously showing military force across the region. The latest turn in this drama, Israel and Lebanon agreeing to a 10-day ceasefire, which started last night. Now, the question is whether this moment will lead to a further cooling in the region and what continued role the U.S. will play. So let's examine the state of relations between the U.S. and the rest of the Middle East with Courtney Freer, an assistant professor of Middle Eastern and South Asian Studies at Emory University. So, Courtney, this new ceasefire just announced, how impactful do you think this will be at ending this conflict overall?
The hope is that it will be extended and that this will be a sustainable ceasefire. I mean, so far, I think maybe what's also really hopeful news is the fact that Israel and Lebanon are speaking to each other. And this is the first diplomatic meetings we've seen between the Lebanese government and the Israeli government since 1983. So I think the hope is that if these two parties can come to the table, that this ceasefire can be sustained. Of course, the big question is, what will Hezbollah do? I mean, Hezbollah is an Iranian proxy and has been attacking Israel from Lebanese territory. So will Hezbollah basically abide by the ceasefire? This is a big question in terms of unknowns.
So overall in the region, how would you describe the U.S. strategy right now? Is it deterrence, diplomacy, or sort of both at the same time?
I'd say it's both at the same time. I think also towards Iran, we're seeing more of a focus on what the Joint Chiefs of Staff called the financial equivalent of a military campaign. So placing financial pressure on Iran in the hopes of bringing Iran to the negotiating table so that a sustainable deal can be made. And I think when it comes to Lebanon, this is kind of a part of that effort towards a ceasefire, since the Iranian government said that Lebanon needed to be included in any type of ceasefire moving forward. So I think we're seeing kind of dual tracks when it comes to diplomacy, continued Pakistan-mediated talks, as well as this kind of financial pressure building on Iran.
And so even with this ceasefire, though, we still know the Strait of Hormuz is still a little bit unstable. How big of a concern is that right now?
So, I mean, the ceasefire between the U.S. and Iran is set to expire on the 22nd, which is Tuesday. And so it's unclear whether what we will see. What I assume we may see is an extension of this ceasefire without a solid, long-standing agreement. So we may see a continuation of this mediation process. And so it's unclear how and when a longer-term solution could take place, given a lot of the questions about nuclear enrichment, Iranian proxies, its missiles program, et cetera. And on the Lebanese side, I mean, we'll see what happens when it comes to the talks between the Israeli government and the Lebanese government, whether they're able to come to a sustainable agreement moving forward.
It is wildfire season here in Georgia. Conditions less than ideal. Remember, we've had just one day this month with rain. Remember Easter Sunday? And it wasn't much at all. With little rain in sight, fire danger building ahead of the annual burn ban that begins 2 weeks from today. As you look at that drought monitor, we are in an extreme drought here around Metro Atlanta. So joining us now from the Georgia Forestry Commission is Fire Chief Thomas Barrett to talk more about this. Thomas, good morning, sir. Great to be with you.
Good morning, Dan. Good to be with you as well.
So what are you seeing right now in terms of wildfire risk across the state?
Yeah, it's definitely been elevated, just like you mentioned, and showing the drought monitor. I think folks can probably see why. So much of Georgia is in either extreme or exceptional drought right now. Many days since significant rain. You mentioned that rain on Easter, and a good portion of the state didn't really get any then either. So. Yeah, we've certainly been a lot busier the last couple of months than we would typically be.
And, you know, we look at the forecast for the next 7 days, and we have a 20% chance of rain on Sunday, and that's it. I mean, we're nearing the end of the month here, and we may go all of April with very little meaningful rain. What does that do setting us up for the month of May?
Yeah, so it just looking at the wildfire potential for the next couple of months, we're expected to stay really, really high, really above normal, and hotter weather, less rainfall, at least through the end of June, and then hopefully things will kind of return a little bit more normal, but that's only returning to normal. So we really would like for things to turn to below normal, and we don't see that coming anytime soon, certainly. We're definitely gearing up for this weekend. This weekend, as you probably seen from looking at the latest weather forecast, there's a little bit of a front that's going to try to push through this weekend. Maybe a little portions of northwest Georgia might get just a little bit of rain, but the rest of the state is just going to be a dry front. It's going to bring dry air behind it with really low humidities and some stronger winds. So we're really kind of getting geared up for the latter half of this weekend.
Chief Barrett, what have you seen already this year in terms of wildfires across Georgia?
So we usually measure our all of our stuff on the state's fiscal year. So if you go back to July the 1st, right now we're sitting at almost 4,500 wildfires for almost 35,000 acres, and that's well above our 5-year averages. That's probably about double our 5-year averages, really, in both number of fires and acreage burned.
Double the 5-year average?
That's about right. Yes, sir. We've been on an uptick a little bit for the last couple of years, and last year was a really busy year for fires. But just to give you a kind of a comparison, so all of the previous fiscal year, we had 3,200 wildfires, and this year, with still 2.5 months to go, we're sitting at 4,500. So,
wow.
So that just goes to show you how busy we've been.
Yeah, I mean, what kind of strain is that putting on the firefighters and your office and folks who go out there to try to prevent this?
Yeah, so definitely everybody's been busy. Everybody's pretty much we're averaging 40 to 50 fires a day right now, and that's actually down just a little bit compared to a couple of weeks ago. So I think the last day in Georgia where we didn't have a single wildfire was December the 8th of 2025. Wow. So everybody's been running pretty hard. It's what the guys and gals live for, though. In the Forestry Commission, they're ready. They train all the time when they're not having fires, and they're sitting there waiting for the next call. And I put our firefighters up against anybody in the country. We generally speaking, our response time is really, really fast. So we get to the fires really, really quickly. And then we're very aggressive in the way that we fight fires. So just the state can be proud that they have that kind of firefighting force out there. And of course, have a lot of cooperators that help us too. A lot of volunteer fire departments all throughout the state. So couldn't do it without them.
Yeah. Hats off to you and all those crews. Anything more we all can do who are watching this right now to try to do our part? I mean, I know we got a burn ban starting soon. What should we know about that? And what more do you want people to be doing in these coming dry weeks ahead when it comes to trying to prevent these wildfires?
Yeah, sure. So I'll talk about the burn ban for a second first. So the burn ban is something that we do every year in around 54 counties that are around Metro Atlanta, and that's really for air quality. So we ask folks not to burn during that time of the year, and that's due to high levels of ozone. So that's kind of really what that's about. But right now, we just ask folks to be super careful with any outdoor burning that they might be doing. Obviously, in the spring, people like to clean up their yards and rake up their leaves and sticks and all that kind of stuff. And sometimes the easiest way to get rid of it is to burn it in the backyard. So we just ask folks to use a little common sense. Make sure you're burning it, if you do, in an open area away from the woods, away from any structures. And then the biggest thing is to stay with it and to make sure that it's out before you leave. So just a little common sense. And then also, if you are, doing some recreating out in the wilderness, in the woods, be careful with your campfires, be careful with your cooking fires, and just be careful with the equipment that you're taking out there too, because even right now, as dry as it is, hot exhaust from cars or ATVs, UTVs can start fires really quickly too.
Recession odds are still lingering with us. So to clear all of this up for us, to break it all down, we've got Mark Hamrick, who is Bankrate's senior economic analyst. Mark, welcome.
Good to be with you, Joe.
So, Mark, with the recession fears looming, we heard the R word a lot. Last year, we found that this economy is pretty resilient, pretty buoyant when it comes to how sturdy it can be. So what are your gauging now as far as recession risk for 2026?
Yeah, and Joe, just to frame this for you, this is our quarterly economist survey, and we survey nearly 24 of the nation's top private economists and then put their forecasts into our story, which is at bankrate.com, which is focused on the housing market, but also delves into everything from the job market to the inflation outlook to those recession odds. And so this is the collective consensus of a group of some of the nation's top economists. So to the point, they say that the risk of a recession over the next 12 months is roughly 1 in 3. So that suggests that it is far from a sure thing. We have to acknowledge that over the last 6 weeks or so, the number one sort of change with the economy is, of course, the Iran war. And this is a story we're monitoring day to day. The recent developments are hopeful in that regard. And as an indication of that, you see the move higher in stock prices, you see bond market yields falling. And the yield of the 10-year Treasury is very important. Why? Because that sets the tone for where the 30-year fixed rate mortgage goes. And with housing affordability, home loan financing being key concerns here, if we can get that mortgage rate lower, that's going to be less of a strain on the housing market. Broadly, I would say the economists look for some improvement in the job market if you look at the hiring trends over the next year. Remember, in 2025, we basically had no improvement in hiring at all, averaging about 10,000 jobs added a month. And they look for the unemployment rate to tiptoe slightly higher, but not falling out of bed, so to speak. And so, what I would say is that if the economists are right, and that's always a big question mark, that we should look for a measure of stability. But as we've seen, these events that occur around the world, much of which has been under the decision making of the United States in the sense of tariffs and the war, those are big determinants. And if the administration does something else that could upset the apple cart with the economy, then these predictions may be, undermined by the unfolding of events.
Yeah, Mark, we've seen the impact tariffs can have on even home builders when you think of raw materials and other goods it takes, as well as labor costs, right? But you mentioned the war in Iran. How exactly do events in the Middle East play a role in maybe mortgage rates or economic tea leaves, if you will?
Great question, and it's worth noting that the University of Michigan Consumer Sentiment Survey, which is closely watched as sort of taking the temperature of the attitudes of consumers, recently fell to a record low. So worse than COVID, worse than the days of high inflation resulting from Russia's invasion of Ukraine, worse than the great financial crisis. And so that's just a temperature taking of attitudes, is not fully indicative of what behavior might be. So to answer your question, how do those things connect? Well, first of all, we know that bottling up the flow of oil in the Strait of Hormuz, when crude oil is priced globally in financial markets, we've seen that pop in gasoline prices. And that doesn't only affect gasoline, it affects diesel fuel, which is used by trucks in the United States to get things from farm fields, from distribution centers, from manufacturing facilities, essentially to their customers, people like us, to grocery stores and all the other stores that we do business with. And of course, jet fuel prices. And so if we can get some of these prices moving back lower rather than staying up or even moving higher, that would be very useful. We've seen some surveys, for example, of farmers in the United States that has indicated that they will not buy as much fertilizer as they need to essentially grow the food that we need because they can't afford it, because that's been another thing that's been impacted by the supply chain disruption. And Joe, we're reminded that, we all kind of got a lesson in supply chains during COVID, right? Where much of the world had to stay put, couldn't go to work, couldn't produce cars, couldn't produce as many semiconductors, computer chips, and everything else. We remember those paper product shortages. And this is a reminder that we are part of a globally connected economy. We do not have borders that are like castle walls around the United States when it comes to our dependence, our desire to buy goods that are produced around the world, even as, it's an agreed to kind of aspiration that we would like to have more production in the United States. But where that happens, there is a price. So to bring it back around, I would tell people that if you're in the market for a home, many of the people who are going to purchase a home do so because of changes in their lives or their life cycle. So, for example, getting ready to get married or getting married, having children, downsizing, all those things are informative. And the reality is that the 30-year fixed rate mortgage, this week's average at Bankrate at 6.34%, this is trending below where it was a year ago. And if you shop around, you can still get a lower rate than that. So these are impediments to what we want to achieve with our financial goals in our lives. But that doesn't mean that we're going to hit a brick wall. It's more of an oil slick with the affordability challenges that we're experiencing.
The Howard School in Atlanta is celebrating 75 years, really helping kids who have learning differences find what works best for them. That's why we're so excited to have Dr. Anna Moore here to talk a little bit about the history of the school and what this school is doing for students. Dr. Moore, I've heard incredible things about the Howard School, and I'm so pumped to hear from you the history behind it. I understand this was founded by an incredible woman. Can you tell us about it?
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. Yes, Marion Howard, an Atlanta native, graduate of Agnes Scott College. And most remarkable to me about her story is she's a woman who lived with cerebral palsy. And that must mean that she moved differently. She probably spoke and sounded different. I imagine she spent much of her life being othered and overlooked and judged. And so in 1950, she decided to build a school, the Howard School. And she created a space that was intended to celebrate students exactly as they arrived, a space that wouldn't see limitations, but would see opportunity and potential. And 75 years later, we stand strong in her legacy, serving Atlanta's children.
That is so incredible. What a visionary she was at that time to say, you know, all kids deserve to be celebrated, and we're going to build a place where we can do exactly that. Over the 75 years, can you talk to me about how different accommodations and approach to education has changed?
Absolutely. And in fact, I would say that the Howard School has led the charge over the 75 years because since our beginning, we are a deeply research-infused space. We partner with scientists from around the country. So the toolbox we have at the Howard School to help children with dysgraphia, dyslexia, dyscalculia, ADHD is deep and rich and being updated monthly as we partner with scientists to understand the best approach to serve these children. One thing at the Howard School that really stands out is we use assistive technology and have done so for decades now to continue to serve and empower our learners.
I love that. And I love that you're meeting kids exactly where they are. When you're talking about these specific diagnoses, you're really looking at each individual student and saying, how can I help you best? I think that is so cool. When you're talking about the science behind some of this, can you talk about some of those technologies or things that might look different if we were to walk in there?
Absolutely. So one thing that's going to look different right away at the Howard School is there'll be 10 to 12 children in a room with 2 teachers. And then we have 8 speech language pathologists, 5 literacy coaches, 3 math specialists, and 3 assistive technology experts. So just right away, the people, that's our greatest asset, right? But followed up by that, you may see students who are using certain note-taking devices. You may see students who are using speech-to-text devices, students who are using different applications as they move through geometry or calculus classes. And so what we're able to do at the Howard School is tailor our approach to the unique needs of the exact learner in front of us.
That's so important. And you are outlining some of it already, but can you just talk about the difference between the Howard School and what we might see in public education?
Sure, absolutely. As an independent school, we don't receive state or federal monies to cover any of our operational costs. So one thing that means, unlike a public school, is we depend entirely on tuition and fundraising. Fundraising is an incredibly important part of our being able to have the layers of support that we put around students here at Howard. But it also means because we don't receive those funds, we don't have the restrictions or regulations that might be placed on us if we did receive state and federal dollars. So instead, we're really empowered with agency and autonomy to create a learning journey that's truly transformative for each child and what he or she needs.
I love that. I know you also have summer programs. Can you talk to us a little bit about what's going on in the summer there?
Yes, so summer's coming up, and summer is a very fun time on our campus. One thing we offer is teacher training. So for teachers around the country who want to come learn more about how to teach minds that learn differently, we offer those programs. We offer driver's ed classes for children who learn differently and maybe just need a different pace or scaffolding. We have executive training classes for kids who want to work on attention and organization. And then we have fun summer camp opportunities for our youngest learners. So K through 8 can come and do some academic work in the morning, keep those skills strong, and then just have a fun camp experience with other amazing kids.
That sounds super fun. How are you marking 75 years of serving Atlanta?
Okay, tomorrow, Sunday, we are having a big birthday bash. So I was very happy to hear that the weather is going to be good on Sunday afternoon from 2 to 5 on our campus. We're going to have student-led music and great festivities to celebrate 75 years.
That is so awesome. And just lastly, can you talk about what it feels like when you're in the Howard School? What is the feeling that you want that school culture to feel like?
Absolutely. The single word I would use to describe what it feels like at Howard is joy. Families show up here often not trusting schools, feeling hurt, feeling angry about the journey. And what happens at Howard is we are able to fully embrace the student and the family, strip away that fear and mistrust. And so joy is what permeates our hallways.
Gas prices had been falling here in Georgia, but that relief may not last given some of the uncertainty in the Strait of Hormuz. Let's talk more about that right now with the head of petroleum analysis at Gas Buddy, Patrick DeHaan, joining us. Patrick, good morning. You know, when we talked on Friday, you struck this optimistic tone because we had statements from Iran and the U.S. signaling the Strait was ready to reopen. But things changed. How are you feeling this morning?
Well, a little bit less optimistic, although I will say that at least we saw the decrease continue over the weekend. Metro Atlanta looking at prices that are now 10 cents lower than last week. We're also about 20 cents below where we were a month ago. Average price is about $3.57 a gallon, but we could see prices at the pump now starting to go back up. Oil prices starting the week up 4 to 5%, but that is a slight decrease from last night when oil prices opened and were up about 7%. Just a lot of back and forth, and this just kind of highlights how fragile the situation really is. You had last week a lot of optimism. The U.S. and Iran were saying the same thing, and then things kind of fell apart. And we're kind of back in the same boat that we were last week. The president now escalating, promising new attacks on Iran if they don't come down and make a deal with the United States. So just a lot of back and forth, and we are back at the square one, starting the week with a lot more of that, and hopefully some sort of improvement this week. But motorists will probably see a little bit of a jump here later this week if nothing new develops and oil prices continue to move higher.
You know, we're still doing a little better here in Georgia than some of the neighboring states because of that gas tax holiday that we've talked so much about. So around $4 nationally. A lot of people wondering, when is it going to get below $3? I want to play a soundbite from Energy Secretary Chris Wright over the weekend when he was asked about that. How soon could gas prices again dip below $3 a gallon? This is what he said.
That could happen later this year. That might not happen till next year. But prices have likely peaked, and they'll start going down. Certainly with a resolution of this conflict, you'll see prices go down. Prices across the board on energy prices will go down.
All right, so the Energy Secretary saying it could be months, maybe even next year before we get below $3. Is that lining up with what you're seeing?
You know, I'd still think that there's a possibility that we could get to sub $3 prices later this year. I mean, hopefully the situation isn't still ongoing by then. I mean, if it is, then he's got a point. But I would think that, you know, due to the seasonal factors for gasoline prices reversing as we get into cooler weather, as long as we don't see a major hurricane, we could see gas prices by later this year back below the $3 a gallon mark. Not everywhere, but maybe pockets of states. But again, that's contingent on the situation improving. Expect necessarily that prices have peaked yet. I mean, there's the distinct possibility that we could still go higher. The national average last week touching $4.17 a gallon. I mean, if the situation doesn't break, we will likely continue to see oil prices trending higher until there is some sort of clarity on exactly what is happening between the U.S. and Iran. And that's the direction we'll probably see this week. The national average could jump 5 or 10 cents a gallon, and we could be very close to that peak of 417. So I would just expect a lot of volatility. This is not going to be just one trend for the next few weeks. This is a constant up-down game that we're going to have to settle for this roller coaster here until the coast becomes a little bit more clear.
And you mentioned what could be another bump along the roller coaster, which would be hurricane season starting on June 1st. I mean, right around the corner. That gas tax holiday here in Georgia, it ends a month from now. And Patrick, that kind of all lines up around Memorial Day weekend, when we know a lot of folks do like to drive. I mean, do you think we're in for a rude awakening at the start of summer for what gas prices could look like come June 1?
I'd hope that we wouldn't. I don't know how much higher we'll go, but it really is contingent on what comes out of the talks that are happening over in Pakistan. So, I mean, is there a possibility that we could be paying $4 a gallon closer to Memorial Day? Sure, that's a possibility. If the situation remains ongoing, there's still a massive hole being felt in the Strait of Hormuz being disrupted. So as long as it continues to be disrupted, we're going to continue to see cascading impacts, and we could quickly see the pendulum swing to gas prices that go up. I mean, it's just an absolute uncertain situation. It's impossible to predict what we're going to look like by Memorial Day because it's very much contingent on what, and if anything, develops from these talks that are going to be happening.
When we look at this map showing the Strait of Hormuz and all these ships sitting in limbo, do we have any idea in the thousands, millions, perhaps billions of barrels of oil that are sitting on the other side, just sitting there?
It's probably in the hundreds of millions at this point, both on tankers that are kind of waiting to get oil and those that may be stuck behind in the strait. To date, I mean, we're 50 days into this now, and if you multiply that by roughly about 18 million barrels a day, I mean, some of that oil can get out via the Red Sea instead of the Strait of Hormuz. We're getting close now to 1 billion barrels that have been completely impacted by this that otherwise would have gotten to customers in Asia and Europe. So, I mean, it's a significant impact, and it's going to take many, many months for those global oil inventories to start recovering after the strait is restored.
Patrick, I want to ask you about airlines because, here in Atlanta, Delta is based here. It's also the world's busiest airport, and they operate on small margins there. What is this doing to airlines, and how could that possibly be passed on to consumers over the next few weeks or months?
Well, a lot from airlines. We've seen checked baggage fees go up. Some of these secondary fees are going up. Airfares are going up themselves. And now we're really starting to see airlines look at efficiencies, canceling routes that are not selling very frequently and using those planes or parking them for the time being. You're going to see capacity go up. The flight you're going to be on is likely to be full. And airlines are starting not to return to those risky routes. And already new routes that have been added are starting to roll back. You're seeing airlines avoid areas like LAX, where jet fuel is among the highest price in the country, where there could be issues in the weeks ahead because California now is uniquely beholden to imports that are being tied up behind the Strait of Hormuz. So a lot of these higher pressure situations we're starting to see take place. Airfares up, fees going up, and airlines starting to cancel routes that don't look like they'll be close to capacity. So it's going to be a very turbulent summer. And even those airlines that do fly areas like Europe, you're probably going to see a lot more domestic flights canceled. So if you're an American going overseas, it could be a bit of a nightmare as well. Europe and the IEA saying 6 weeks of jet fuel is left in Europe. There could be a lot of challenges over there if you're traveling to Europe this summer. I mean, if you're taking an inter-Europe flight, a domestic flight over there, could be very troublesome as we start to see major impacts on jet fuel production and supplies.
This week is National Infant Immunization Week, which is meant to highlight the importance of life-saving vaccines. This also comes after a controversial change to the childhood vaccine schedule earlier this year by Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Well, the new schedule reduces the number of recommended vaccines from 17 down to 11. However, the American Academy of Pediatrics continues to recommend the former vaccine schedule. The changes have caused a lot of confusion for a lot of parents about what's recommended and when. So for more on this and what parents need to know and what's changed as well, we're joined by Dr. Jody Guest with Emory University's Rollins School of Public Health. Thanks so much for being with us this morning. So for a lot of parents who may be hearing about the changes, they've heard about the changes, what's the most important thing they should really know and understand right now?
Well, there are two really important things to remember this week. One is vaccines save lives, and they are one of our biggest public health successes we've ever seen. And second, the changes in childhood vaccinations have actually been blocked by a federal judge. So you can still currently get all of the originally recommended and scientifically backed vaccines for your children.
We talked about the number of vaccines being reduced, but what are some of the most common misconceptions that you're hearing from parents and patients right now?
Well, that there was science to change the reason that they wanted to reduce the vaccines, and there is no new science. The science consistently shows us that these vaccines save lives. These are the healthiest things that you can get for your children, and all parents want their children to be healthy. That's our outcome.
Why is it so important, though, for infants especially to stay on schedule with these recommended vaccines?
Yeah, that's a great question. We know that these vaccines work the best when your child receives them before the age of 2, for those that are recommended for that age group. And so their immune system is going to learn the most from the vaccines at that age. And we also know they're most at risk during that time. So it is a win-win to go ahead and follow the schedule.
So are the changes that we talked about something that parents should be concerned about at this point, or more about just the timing and clarification that we're hearing?
Well, again, at the moment, the changes have been blocked by a federal judge, and we're really hopeful that that will continue because, again, these changes were not based on science. And instead, we want parents to recognize how incredibly important these vaccines are and how well studied they have been.
So if a parent has perhaps kind of been waiting to see how this will all play out, if a parent has fallen behind on their child's vaccines, what should they be doing right now if they've fallen behind and maybe want to now move forward?
Right. So now is the perfect time to talk to your clinician about vaccines and make sure that you are understanding which vaccines your child needs. We have about 19 million children in the United States who are under-vaccinated. And so this is the perfect time. This is the week that we want to be talking about how important it is to get all of those children and their parents to a clinician to talk about their vaccine schedule.
You talked about some of the early vaccines and why they're so important. What are some of the diseases and illnesses that these early vaccines help prevent?
Yeah, that's another great question. And so we want to be preventing things like pneumococcal disease, Haemophilus influenza. We want to be DTaP, which is tetanus is the primary one that most people think about that, but also diphtheria. Rotavirus is really important, polio, measles, mumps, and rubella. Many of these diseases, most of us have never seen in our lifetime or known someone that's had it. And that is because these vaccines have saved lives and prevented these illnesses.
And so would you say the best advice right now, if people have questions, is to really consult with their own doctors?
Absolutely. We know that most people trust their clinicians to provide the best guidance for them and their children. And so we really hope that you will speak to them if you have questions about vaccines.
A major milestone for one Atlanta organization working on the front lines of family homelessness. The Atlanta Children's Day Shelter celebrating 40 years now, 40 years in the community of helping children and parents get back on their feet. Let's talk about what they do and what we need to know in this moment with the executive director, Cameron Turner, joining us live this morning. Cameron, good morning. Congratulations and thank you for your time.
Good morning, Dan. Thanks for having me today.
All right, so 40 years. When you look back at 4 decades of serving the community, what does that look like?
It really looks like giving families a pathway to self-sufficiency. And we have a 2-generational approach that serves both the parent and the child. And we are thrilled that we are able to celebrate this 40th anniversary after serving thousands upon thousands of lives over the past 40 years.
Tell me more about that 2-generational approach. You help the parent and you help the kid, but are there also times where you're helping maybe just a kid and the parent doesn't need help or vice versa?
It's always the 2-generational approach for our families that we serve. We have a holistic, inclusive child education center that has full wraparound services with mental health. But then on the parent side, as we're taking care of their children, we are serving the parents with what they need. We're asking them, what are their hopes and dreams? Where would they like to go? And that could look like, for many, housing, employment, but also workforce development, mental health services, and so much more.
You think back on 40 years, are there any success stories in particular that you're really proud of?
There's so many that come to mind, but one was last year when we served a little boy named William. He was 5 years old, and his mother, they had escaped a house fire, and they had lost, unfortunately, all of their family members in that fire. And so they came to us needing services, and unfortunately, William had lost his ability to speak after such a heavy trauma. And so we were able to walk alongside him and not only help him with his educational and developmental goals, but get him in speech therapy and trauma therapy. And so by the time he left us and headed to kindergarten, he was thriving and fully speaking again. And it just really spoke to the work that we did holistically with the family.
You know, Cameron, you mentioned house fires. We had the Red Cross here in the studio not too long ago, and I was stunned to learn how many house fires they respond to on an annual basis. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds here in Georgia. And you often forget about what families have to deal with months and weeks down the road. How many people do you have coming through the day shelter who are impacted by house fires alone?
I would say a few here and there. A majority of the families that we serve are single moms that are walking through domestic violence challenges and trauma. And so we can serve up to 48 children in our shelter at any time, which comes out to about 30 or 35 families, depending on the size of the family. But what each family is walking through is very unique and different. And whether it's a house fire or domestic violence, or just a long cycle of homelessness, we are here to stand in the gap and help each family that comes to our door.
Well, sadly, domestic violence been at the forefront, and really just last week you had the Virginia Lieutenant Governor situation. You had that awful situation yesterday down in Louisiana and impacting all those kids. What do you want people to know who are watching right now in Metro Atlanta if they need help, if they're unsure where to go? Where can you step in? Who all can you benefit?
Yeah, so whether you have children that fit our age group of 0 to 5 in your family, or you have older children, we'd love to talk with you and help you find the resources that you need. And so you can just go to our website, acsatl.org, and there's a blue button called Get Help. And so we'd love for you to click that button, and one of our team members would love to speak with you about what your needs are, and we'd love to help.
Cameron, what are you seeing in the here and now with family homelessness in 2026, and what's driving it really?
There's a lot of different factors that are driving homelessness, and especially in Atlanta. The affordable housing crisis, parents being able to have jobs with living wages. It's a very complex issue. There's mental health challenges that are involved with that. So that is why we take the steps to have holistic, deep, long programs to serve parents in whatever way they need. It's just very challenging with the housing crisis right now on finding affordable housing for parents in our care.
Anything you need from the community right now to help you guys out?
Well, as we're celebrating our 40th, we have a wonderful event coming up next week on Wednesday, the 29th. It's our Legacy Builders event. We would love the community to come out. We're celebrating a parent that has just thrived after graduating from the program. And then we're also celebrating 40 years of service. So we'd love to have the community out, but we also have needs within the shelter as well. So if people feel that they can help us, we have ways that they can do drives for us in the community. We always need diapers, we always need wipes and baby formula. So however somebody feels led, we'd love to work with them.
That's Cameron Turner, Executive Director of the Atlanta Children's Day Shelter. Again, congratulations on 40 years. Check out their website for more information. And thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you so much, Dan.
You're welcome.